Hello, everybody. I just want to start out by saying thank you to the people who prayed me here, because I know there were prayers who got me here, Lee and Kim and Nan specifically. I'm thankful for your prayers because this is actually the first time that I'm sharing the story. I've told people that my story includes being the survivor of sexual abuse as a child. And this whole testimony thing is fairly new to me because I grew up in a very quiet United Methodist church. We sang, and one person up in the pulpit area talked, and then we went home. And the first time I heard a messy testimony was in my friend's mother's hospital room. My friend's mom had had a stroke, and I went to the hospital, and her pastor was there, and he called us together for a prayer circle around the bed. And the pastor started praying for a healing. And as he prayed, he said, I know you can do this because, God, you healed me from drugs. You healed me from heroin. I was injecting heroin. And he said, where? My eyes popped open. We don't do that in the Methodist church. Like, I could not imagine. You know what I mean? Someone like just all of a sudden out of nowhere telling their God story to include something that rhymes with totem pole. Blown away. Like couldn't even concentrate on the prayer at that point. But I knew there was deliverance there. And he was being vulnerable in this prayer in a way I had never in my life heard someone be vulnerable. So fast forward to moving to Indianapolis, where I started attending a Baptist church where testimony was encouraged. And I was working at that time at a gospel radio station and an R&B hip-hop station. And the pastor of one of the mega churches invited me to be a part of a youth panel because I had been a youth leader at my previous church. And they were having this big youth conference, and there were going to be 500 young people there. And he invited this panel to talk to these kids, and he wanted them to hear real truth from real Christians. So I sat on that panel knowing I was there to do the right thing. God wanted me to be here. God has always wanted me to connect with young people. I know this. So I sat on that panel along with some other amazing people, and it was a Q&A. And I bombed. And I bombed big. Because as I sat on that panel, one of the kids asked the question, like to open it up. This kid stands up at this youth conference and he says, how old were you the first time you had sex? Seriously? Seriously. You can't ask me when I got saved at Methodist summer camp. You can't ask me how God works in my life, how I use him at work. The first question is, how old were you when you had sex? So I'm listening to the answers from the youth pastor and the other people who'd been called. And as I'm listening, I'm thinking, my first sexual encounter or the first time I enjoyed it? And I failed. Because knowing what I know now, that 1 in 4 girls is sexually abused and 1 in 5 boys, there was a kid there who needed to hear the real story, really needed to hear it. I know there was, but I couldn't do it. Words mean a lot to me and labels mean a lot to me. Coach Dooney, those too. All of the labels. And I couldn't quite bring myself to give myself that label in front of those kids. So I decided I would craft the kind of lie that the church folks would like me to tell the kids to keep them on the right path, And I decided I would bump my age up a little bit, kind of to the mid-college area, admit that I had not been a virgin when I got married, but at least give them some type of truth. And then the devil stepped in again because the woman sitting next to me begins to share her testimony, the purity testimony of a 32-year-old virgin. The only other woman on the panel. So I'm thinking, there are some girls here who really don't need to know about what I did in high school. They need to hear what I should have done. So I let them down. And I know the reasons why now, even in that moment, I wasn't ready to go there, because my story was just so messy, so ugly. Do you talk about those things? I was 5 years old. While the adults chuckled and laughed outside at a cookout, the kids played inside. And some older girls took turns pinning me down and forcing me to kiss them and climbing on top of me. And they terrorized me, absolutely terrorized me. Until finally they kind of got tired of me. I went running outside, and what I said through my tears to those grown-ups horrified them all. It was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with this kid? My mom shushed me and told me just go somewhere and sit down, and I felt like I was in trouble. I'd done something wrong. I'd been a victim. And then I heard about the girl next door to us in the apartments where we lived. The boy upstairs had tried to crawl into her window and crawl on top of her. And, she was way too sexy. I heard the way they talked about her. So part of me said, you know what? If you're not too cute, maybe if you're just face cute, not all over cute, it's okay. And maybe if you don't talk about it, it didn't happen, and it's okay. If they don't know about it, they can't label you too. So I hid my label. And my label came back up to haunt me the first time I lost weight. Because I grew up, I was the chubby kid. I had this insulation, and it worked for me. It made me invisible to men. And when I lost weight the first time, I got on Jenny Craig, and I slimmed down like 40 pounds, and I could shop at the Limited. Ooh, I thought it was something. Hitting the MJR sales, which if you ever go to Columbus, you got to hit the MJR sales. And I was feeling kind of cute, and men were kind of coming out of the woodwork. And one Sunday, the pastor of my church, who was kind of flirty too, asked me to stand up so that the whole church could admire my new body. I hadn't been asked to stand up for being a youth leader or for singing in the choir. Granted, not the best alto, but I did my best. I was asked to stand up so the church could look at my body. And I wanted to crawl under a pew. I stood up and I smiled, and I felt like I was in danger. Why do I feel like I'm in danger in church? Why do I feel that way? And as I dated, I wondered, why do these guys like me? I'm the same person I was before. Why? Oh, I'm lovable now. I'm dateable now. Even the church loves me more now. This is fantastic. But it wasn't. It didn't feel good. I felt completely and totally unsafe. And a part of me knew or felt like these people who decided to love me now would be gone if the weight came back. And then another part of me said, you're not worth it. You're not worth it to me. My health wasn't worth it to me, because at that point it was really all about superficial things. It was about wearing a different size. It was about being cuter. But I couldn't handle it. So fast forward to the diabetes, as Wilford Brimley calls it. I don't know why no one taught him how. If you have it, you should learn how to say it, diabetes. It's the family curse. One by one, we hit 40, we get the sugar. It's just what happens. And, you hear the conversations. Who has the sugar now? Who lost a toe? Who's got kidney problems? The news is never good with the sugar. It's never good. And when I finally got that label, doctor says, you're morbidly obese and you have diabetes. Well, thank you. I didn't want those labels either. But those the doctor gave to me, And I was willing to carry those until I continued to watch my friends and family suffer and succumb in many ways. It's a slow thief. So I said, God, something's got to change, and I need help. I decided that I would look into gastric bypass surgery because a lot of diabetes, a lot of people who had diabetes would go into remission. Immediately after the surgery, they would start going into remission, would leave the hospital not needing their meds anymore, and those meds tear you up. It's not fun. And as I looked into it, I said, you know what? How can I not feel unsafe this time? So I decided that I would start talking about my label, the ugly one, the really ugly one, the one that was uglier, I thought, than morbidly obese and diabetic, the sexual abuse survivor. And the first person I talked to was my mom, who, by the way, is my best friend and awesome mom. Don't you dare judge her. And she was so guilty and so angry that I felt judged again. And it was her guilt. And every parent of a child who has been taken advantage of by an adult that parent trusted feels that same thing. But I also knew that if I continued to try to protect her, I couldn't get the healing that God was willing to offer me physically, emotionally, and spiritually. That I had to love me too. So I started looking for safe places to share because I definitely wasn't ready to go public. I started looking for safe places. I talked to a friend of mine named Sharon, who's a minister, and went okay. And I opened up to a sorority sister who confided in me that she too had been sexually abused. Never knew, because I tell you, there's a club. It's kind of like the plastic surgery club. You don't talk about it unless you know other people are in the club. You just pretend like you didn't have it. Sexual abuse is the same way for a lot of people. When you find out, oh, you too? Yeah, me too. And then a bond develops. I'm going to go through a lot of these, and I'm hoping that none of you get grossed out by snot, because it's coming. So I shared it then with my radio partner, Matt. And it was okay then too, because despite the fact that he plays this really caustic, crazy guy on the radio, deep down inside, he is also messy and nutty, and he's got a heart of gold. And I told him that as part of my weight loss journey, I needed to talk about it because someone needed to hear it. Just like I needed to hear someone be okay. And I never got that. Someone needed it. And so he said, okay. And as I started my journey, started talking about the fact that I was trying to get qualified for surgery, and they sent me to a therapist who told me that if you have spirituality on your side and you have gastric bypass surgery, you have better success. So I was like, okay, even the therapist is on Team Jesus. Here we go. I got this. I got this. Started getting mean letters from people who said I was not doing it, losing weight the right way. But I'm trying to, do y'all remember the whole diabetes, morbid obesity thing? Morbid obesity, it wasn't like happy obesity. It wasn't cool, it was morbid obesity. I'm like 232 pounds. And it's like, I can't understand why people are attacking me for trying to get healthy. Like, why is this happening? And then I said, Matt, I'm ready. Today's the day. Put my talk on the calendar. Put it on the schedule. What are we going to do at 5 o'clock hour? Yeah. And I did that probably every other week for months. And we get to that time when it was supposed to be my time to share my testimony with our listeners who I can't even see. And he'd say, are you ready? And I'd say, nope. I couldn't. I wasn't. And finally went to Penn State, and smack dab in the middle of that journey, right in the middle of my notes, these brave little boys
took down the Penn State football program, the mighty Penn State football program, and they were being pummeled by people who hated them for destroying their football program. How could I let these boys be so brave and me have Jesus on my side and still be so reluctant to share? They helped me. These boys helped me. If I could be as brave as they could, then I could help somebody too. These boys. So that was it. My nope turned into today. And the next day, I got a very nasty email from the leader of the local Penn State Alumni Club in Charlotte. I was like, wow. Wow. Imagine what those young men are going through. I'm an adult, like twice their age in Charlotte. This is crazy. And then I had the surgery, lost the weight. Sonia Gant from NBC Charlotte did a story with me. QCityMetro.com did a story, and it began to spread that I was a sexual abuse survivor. I tried it on. Okay, it was good. But then the floodgates opened. There were so many people who were hurting, who now knew I was in the club. I wasn't ready for them. My emails, the voicemails from moms who were afraid for their daughters, from spouses, from survivors, male and female, from people who were simply lonely because of their obesity. Not because they had been sexually abused, but because they were eating something else. I was eating fear and anxiety and loneliness, my discomfort. I'm not sure what they were eating, but we were all in that same space. And even though I was losing weight, we were still all spiritually needy, because when you try to eat God away, I can tell you it's delicious. It is delicious. It tastes like cheddar bow biscuits. It tastes like French fries. It tastes like carrot cake with the real cream cheese icing, not that fake stuff that they try to put on you at Walmart. It is delicious, but it is ultimately unsatisfying and unhealthy. And I could have very easily called this Jesus Take the Credit Card, because shopping fills a need for some. I like it a lot. It could have been Jesus Turn the Wine Back to Water. It could be Jesus Take my smartphone calendar, because all of those things that I tried to plug into the Jesus spot didn't fit. They weren't enough. And it wasn't enough to be vulnerable one time, because vulnerability, as my friend Nan told me when I shared with her that I was scared to come here tonight, that I was very nervous, that every time you share your testimony, it loses more of its control over your life. And I was allowing the label to control me. Because I thought back to this one religion professor I had who said, you know what, in the Bible, there were two big things: naming and genealogy. Where you came from. I came from diabetes. And the labels, not just my name, but the labels people gave me and the labels I accepted. And I had to decide that the label of survivor Christian was bigger than all of the other labels, and that I needed someone else to know that Jesus loves you at every size. He doesn't care if you're the girl who only gets to dance when a line dance song comes on, if you're the girl who's holding your friend's purse and saying, oh, that guy over there bought you a drink. I'm thirsty too. I'm thirsty too. That stuff doesn't matter to him at all. And that's what makes it beautiful. And it doesn't matter if your first experience was lovely or horrible, because let me tell you, after those little girls abused me, I was staying with a family friend for a week. And it turns out that that family friend had a teenage son. And her son had a best buddy who was the creepy older brother of one of those girls. And he told me that he would protect me from her if I allowed him to do things that I told no one about. And if all of those other big people at the cookout couldn't protect me, maybe, Lord, this creepy teenager could. So he finished what his sister started, and I never told those kids. And I am hoping that one of those kids sees this video. One of those kids is here, because we're all still kids. We'll all be kids to God. We're all still growing. And my messy testimony, like you said, it's not finished. I'm still a work in progress. I have a very outward testimony, because automatically the first thing that people see is a different size. And that screams at people. I tell you, 2 years ago, I went to church with my mom on Easter Sunday. Easter. Risen Savior Day, right? It's huge. It's huge. It's like the biggest Sunday of the year, am I right? Special clothes, special everything. I go to church with my mom, and after the service, one of the ladies walks over to me and she says, "Wow, you've lost all of your boobs." But that's okay. Guys don't matter. They can still get a little something. Oh. Happy Easter. Happy Easter. The difference between that Sunday and the Sunday I had to stand up was I still felt safe. And that's a big step. It's like, this woman is checking out my boobs in church. She's checking out my boobs in church. And I still felt safe. I have a friend who's had gastric bypass surgery since mine. And I asked her, "Are you comfortable with all the attention on your body?" "Yes." And she came to me a couple of months ago and she said, "No, you're not ready, especially coming from a place where you had insulation. You're not ready for everyone to always, oh, look at your legs. Oh, look at your boobs. Wow, look at your butt." Like, oh. Okay. But thanks to a new type of protection that I have embraced through Jesus, I can still feel safe. So now my testimony can grow from here. And that's what I want you to know, that it grows from wherever you are, whatever size you are. If you need help, get the help. If people judge you for getting help, that's their problem, not yours. If you need a therapist, if you need medication, if you need a prayer partner, if you need a support group, a life group, reach out to other Christians, because they're out there. There will be haters. There will be the people who bring you every part of the devil. And then there will, I promise you, be 10 more people to outnumber them on the good side. Because even though you see the news, we see the worst. Bill Cosby, I believe he did that mess. I believe it. And it worries me that people don't believe, because I look at these kids who have a story to tell, and they're seeing these powerless women being beaten down. I worry for them. We have to support them as human beings, and most definitely as a Christian community. We have to, especially knowing that some of our children have actually been abused in the places where they thought they should have been safe, like church. We have so much work to do, but we can only do that work through serving each other and being vulnerable and sharing our testimony. And I thank you so much for listening to mine. Ooh, that was a good one. That was a real good one.